This is GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 232, entitled A Regendering Plan. Description. This flyer addresses the problem of population annihilation due to the MGTOW boycott of paternity and women's insistence on pursuing their careers into their 30s and only having one kid before they lose their fertility. It suggests measures governments can take by absorbing masculist ideas into their policies. Flyer itself. A Regendering Plan by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Prof. Hugo de Garis at yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Just maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay. This flyer is ambitious. Its goal is to find a way to reorganize the gender roles so that they are fair to men, to women, and affordable to the state, so that the primary aim is met, that whole populations are not wiped out as is currently happening under the current gender roles. Things have to change. One of my favourite MGTOWs, to whom I listen every day, is TFM, Turd Flinging Monkey, who makes the point forcefully that Western societies are wiping themselves out by crashing the birth rate to well under replacement rate due to the fact that women have careers, choose to establish them first, then run out of fertile years so that they typically end up with only one kid. TFM's draconian solution is for men to take away women's rights and force them back to being mothers so that our populations are not wiped out. I don't agree with TFM's solution, which strikes me as being too authoritarian and dictatorial. For example, if he tried to impose women's rightlessness on my sister, she would kill him. But he has made me more conscious of the problem. Something has to be done, because the current rate of gender roles, the current set of gender roles are not working. In fact, they are catastrophically not working. Because in countries like Germany, Italy, Spain, Japan, etc., the current birth rate is about 1.3 children per woman, compared to the replacement rate of 2.1. So, this flyer tosses out ideas, suggestions on how to solve this awful problem, without oppressing neither men nor women. How to do this. As a masculist, I put enormous emphasis on the importance of women pulling their financial weight, so that the masculists need to push young women to FIP up, that is, bother to get a career-competent education so that they can become FIPs, that's financially independent persons, as adults, and not expect to be a fluffy who expects to be able to parasite off a man's money so that she can stay at home in his house that he pays for, raising her kids. The divorce laws must be made men fair so that men are prepared to be fathers again and not face a 1 in 4 risk of being financially massacred in the fluffy feminist hypocrite-dominated divorce court system. So as a piece of social engineering, what steps need to be undertaken to encourage women to have more kids so that the birth rate returns to over 2.1? How about this? Change the social norms such that both sexes equally are socialized by parents and educated by teachers to be FIPs, getting a career-competent education to become FIPs as adults. Encourage women to get their university degree and then work for a few years in their career so that they know what careering is about. By the time they're about 25 to 27, they then have 2 children. Few women will want to have more, since each kid in the US costs the parents about $200,000 each. The government gives the couple a hefty child subsidy to encourage them to have 2 kids. The first subsidy is a substantial amount, and for the second child it's a lot more. The government sets up a Swedish-style child care centre system so that couples can leave their kids in a competently run daycare centre so that both of them can work when the children are still toddlers. Schools are organised so that they become child-minders till parents get home from work. With both the mother and father as FIPs, the total income should be enough for them to work reasonable hours, say 8 or less per day, so that the kids are not orphaned in the school. Parents need to be taught by the society that divorce harms the children, to encourage those fragile marriages that are not so intolerable that they stay together for the sake of their kids. When there is a divorce, then custody of the kids is joint automatically, so that men will not be motivated to reject marriage, as is very much the case today, given the awful toxicity of marriage in today's world due to the hated feminazi bitches who financially massacre men in the divorce courts that the feminazis control. If the woman does not bother to get a career-competent education, then in the case of a divorce, the law should be similar to what happens in China. That is, custody of the kids goes to the father because he has the money to take care of them. This Chinese-style logic will encourage fluffy women to FIP up if they want to get their children back half-time. For fluffy women who are thinking of divorcing, the prospect of losing custody of their kids will motivate them not to divorce and to make more effort to FIP up. The government can advertise that it's the patriotic duty of parents to have 2 kids, not 1. It's better for the first kid because she will have a sibling to play with. It's obviously better for the whole population because it does not die out. Where will all the money come from to pay for the hefty subsidies to encourage parents to have 2 kids, to pay for the daycare centres, etc.? From extra taxes. For example, singles taxes. That is, those people who choose to be childless are forced to pay their part in creating the next generation so that populations don't get wiped out. Governments can exert moral pressure on singles so that the single person understands that her individual decision to not be a parent, when multiplied by millions of people in a country, has macro consequences. That is, the population dies out, which would be a catastrophe. Governments can educate women that recent research shows that women who don't have kids are usually miserable. Women evolve to have lots of kids. Practice shows that women are happiest on the whole when they are surrounded by their kids. Governments can encourage women to be happy by having kids and having a good education so that they can afford to have kids and not have to parasite off a man, which is unfair to men and will cause men to continue the paternity boycott. Governments need to encourage women to accept equal rights with men and equal obligations. That is, governments need to become a lot more masculist in their policies and attitudes. It's the responsibility of governments to promote the welfare of its citizens, both male and female. In the current age, men are too often ignored, resulting in the current rise of MGTOW, which ultimately will wipe out populations. The current gender status quo cannot continue. What's wrong with the above skeleton ideas? How could their weaknesses be patched up? I'll play devil's advocate with myself and see if I can fix my own problems. What happens if too many women insist on remaining fluffies and use their female bloc vote to stop any such government plan along the above lines from being implemented? Here's where the masculists come in. Fluffies can only be fluffies if some gullible manslave is prepared to be parasited upon her. But the supply of such manslaves is drying up due to the effectiveness of the MGTOW and masculist movements in persuading men not to go near fluffy parasites, so fluffies will soon die out. The masculists can persuade parents and teachers to put huge pressure on young women to FIP up. The masculists need to set up men's lib groups in every high school and college to put enormous moral pressure on fluffy classmates to FIP up or be manless and spat at as parasitic criminals. What about the enormous expense? I think the answer is that automation, robotics, AI are about to cause a productivity revolution so that the modern society could afford the above program. Sure, the tax rates will go up to Scandinavian levels of more than a half of your income disappearing in tax, but people will get a lot of it back in subsidies, especially if they are parents. How to change the gender laws if women block vote against them, preferring the current status quo, especially in the divorce courts that are so heavily biased in women's favour. Again, here is where the Masculists save the day. The Masculists can use the media to educate women that if they don't vote with men to men-fair the gender laws, for example, read the divorce laws and bringing in the paternity rejection right, then women will continue to remain babyless due to the MGTOW paternity boycott by men. Thus the Masculists can force women, through fear of babylessness, to vote with men to men-fair the gender laws. What if young women simply refuse to have more kids? How to persuade them? There are several ways. Governments can put moral pressure on them, so too can the schools and parents. Singles taxes can increase heavily to discourage singles from remaining being singles. Those women who insist on being single mothers, who are fluffies, can be punished by governments by taking the children away from the mother and putting them up for adoption. Governments need to be more masculist in their thinking and not take the women's side all the time. Fluffydom needs to be punished for its criminality, for its assumption of manslavery. I hope the above ideas will stimulate you. For myself, I feel this is an ongoing work. I will very probably make more flyers on the above topic because it is of critical importance. We are talking about the preservation of whole populations and the impact that gender roles have on that preservation, or otherwise. It is a very important topic. I hope this flyer will stimulate a debate amongst both sexes and governments on how to solve the population crash problem. Obviously, governments need to listen to both sexes, not just the feminists. Men are half the population. Government refusal to listen to men's gender problems has been criminal because neglecting men's issues has led to the current population crash. Governments need to wake up by having their masculist consciousness raised. A lot of work on the part of the Masculists remains to be done in educating other men, women, and especially governments, who need to change the laws. If nothing is done, if the current grossly men-unfair gender laws remain intact, then we get wiped out population-wise, as the MGTOWs and men in general continue to boycott paternity. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channels de GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW, Flyers, and de GARIS Essays. Ciao.